Hi, I'm Jay, and I wanted to make a video answering some of the questions that I received after my Soft White Underbelly interview. If you are here because you saw that interview with Mark Lyda and you wanted to know more or maybe follow up on some of the questions that you asked, I am here to answer them now. And it was a little ambitious of me to think I was going to get through this in a single day. So, pardon my tardiness on posting this video if I told you I was going to post it yesterday. I'm here now and I am going to take a look at these. I have a lot of questions. Most of them are asking follow up questions about my brother, Brandon. To answer that, unfortunately, I was not able to get Brandon. I had a long period where I just was unstable myself. I needed time to heal and grow, and you know, it's very hard. It's a hard position to be in, to have been his protector, growing up most of my life, and then I have a lot of survivor's guilt over not having my brother with me. And then when I was stable enough and I did try, I was blocked by the state of Virginia. I was given various excuses from various people throughout the system. Everything from, your CPS records and those police reports are no longer in this state. They've been filed away in another state in Ohio, to we can't share any details about this investigation, even though I initiated it. And I've even once had to call Adult Protective Services, and I was told that the only place they could take Brandon was a homeless shelter. So of course I'm not going to do that. So to answer your questions about my brother, I do not have him. I have been unsuccessful in being able to get him away from Tanya. And that's just kind of how it is right now. Things might change in the future. Let me see it. Other questions. Let's see. Other people were asking about how I survived everything and how I moved forward and kept a sense of self. I think a part of me, a large part of me having my brother there, you know, we're very close, we're very bonded, and it just was impossible for me to accept seeing him in pain. And I've always been fiercely defensive of him, as I'm sure many of you are fiercely defensive of the people you care about. And so that would be the number one thing, is having a protectiveness of my brother. And the rest, I think, is that I'm very creative. I come from a long line of artists. And my grandma was an artist. My aunts and uncles were artists. I had a lot of examples around me. My grandma had a ceramic shop and she painted beautiful murals, and that made an impression on me. And I think that creativity carried me through a lot of the tough times, because I was always able to figure things out. At 13 years old, I mean, when I was younger, I was always lying about my age to be able to work. So for example, at 13 years old, I was flipping burgers in a drag race track at an illegal age, serving the race car drivers. I worked at Carl's Jr. after school sometimes, although I never actually got to see those paychecks because Tanya took them, and then we ended up actually leaving Virginia at that point. And the other things that got me through, I would say surviving the trauma was one part. That I didn't have a choice. I had to survive. I was the oldest child. Nobody was going to take care of things except for me. But then after that, adjusting to life after trauma was really hard. There was a lot of unintended secondary trauma, especially from religious entities like my grandmother's church. My grandmother, I don't know why, maybe she was seeking solace or peace or advice, but she did tell a lot of people at the church what happened before my brother and I even got there. And then she brought us to church thinking that would be something healing for us. For me, it was not. What it ended up being was a bunch of strangers in my face asking deeply personal questions about a trauma I hadn't even processed myself. And that was really hard to deal with. It was embarrassing and humiliating and difficult. And then I just never really appreciated church. To me, it just it doesn't work for me. I find my peace actually in Eastern philosophy. I use a lot of people with CPTSD, complex post traumatic stress disorder, a lot of people struggle with black and white thinking. And so when I found the Tao and I read a lot about finding the middle ground, I made that a personal policy for myself that whenever I was faced with two choices, I would create a third choice. And whether that meant taking the best of the choices presented or creating something entirely different, it forced my brain into always thinking of a middle ground. Um, Thich Nhat Hanh was very helpful to me as well. His book, The Art of Communicating, was the very first book. It was given to me, and it was the very first book I read about any kind of self-improvement. And then after that, I was a beast. I devoured everything. Um, just everything. I read the Bhagavad, forgive me if I'm messing this up, Gita, and I read books on Sekhmet and Buddhism. I did a lot of exploring. One of my favorite books was Sapiens by Yuval Harari. And then I slowly made my way into the realms of Nate Postlethwaite, who's been incredibly helpful. I highly suggest his content if you're looking for free resources. Gabor Mate is a legend at this point. Anna Runkle with Crappy Childhood. She's the, what is it, Crappy Childhood Fairy, I think, on YouTube. She's really great for just daily content. And that is a big part of it is while you're still learning to figure out how your body or recalibrate the way that your body adjusts to normal life, it's really helpful to have constant positive experiences on the outside confirming that it's okay to be here and breaking things down and going into the nitty gritty. And Anna Runkle is really good at that. Dr. Ramani is really great at breaking down narcissistic mindsets and how to respond responsibly without losing yourself. Let's see. Off the top of my head, that's who I can think of. Let me pull up another question. Let's see. I had one somebody wrote to me about. She says, "I'm curious. Would you say your childhood trauma molded your artistic side?" This is a good question. No, it did not. I was born with that. Like I said, I was heavily influenced from the short times that I got to spend with my grandparents. They were really nice times. The first time was about 9 months, and the second time was roughly 2 years. The first time we were taken away, the second time we ran away. And yeah, I would say art did carry me through though. Going back to what I said in my first video about how I was never taught hygiene, I was never told anything about my period or handling my skin and hair. And one day Tanya came home with a stack of 17 magazines and Vogue and stuff, and she just gave them to me and didn't say anything. And I don't know where she got them, but I guess that was her attempt at being a girl mom. I don't know. But I took the magazines and I cut them up. I really loved the fashion and the beautiful girls and, just these clean and beautiful women. And so I actually made collages and I covered all my gross old walls and furniture in that trailer with clippings from these magazines. And then my grandma, she didn't know the extent of what was going on. As I said, we were brainwashed into protecting Tanya. And that actually didn't go away even after I ran away. I had to go through a lot of therapy to stop defending the people who abused me. Because I was just so lost at that point in my life. And my grandma, being the wonderful artist and painter that she is, she used to send me normal things to decorate my room. And we never told her. And even my closest friends at school, they had no idea what was going on. They saw that I was dirty and bruised and things, and I would make up excuses like, working with our horses or whatever. And when this interview came out, I got a lot of messages from the people who were close to me who didn't realize how bad things were. And I want to let you know that it was not your fault. The people who intervened, thank you. Thank you so much. There's Just thank you. um, let's see, next question. Oh, okay. So there were questions about Travis and Tanya, where they are now, um, and the time gap. It is true that things can be foggy, especially when you're disassociated for a long time. It was a surprisingly fast turnaround after Travis shot himself in the face, because I guess the way that he was holding the gun, and he shot up through his chin, it went up through his mouth, and I guess it ricocheted out his nose, um, kind of up this way instead of hitting any of the important organs or whatever, his brain and everything. And so I guess it actually ended up not being that bad of an injury. And he was using a shotgun, 22 rifle shotgun thing. I'm not great with guns, but and then he actually faced no charges. Tanya protected him. She swears to this day that she was also a victim, but she was very complicit. Um, she actively protected him. When CPS came out, she did have us lie about him. And then when it got to the point that it was undeniable, she negotiated a ridiculously insulting low amount. She had us sign this weird agreement with the CPS worker. It was this lady, I think her name was Rosie, something with Rose, maybe Rosemary, something with Rose in the name, but she had this long curly blonde hair and kind of a shorter lady. And she came out to the trailer a couple times and, never really did anything. She never helped us. And I don't know what her restrictions were from being able to help us at that time. It was a long time ago. I think the rules were different. I know at that time the statute of limitations was 18 years old for child abuse too, which how can you even sue at that age? And then I think later on, like quite a few years later, it increased, I think, to 26 or 36. I can't quite remember. For being able to press charges for child abuse in Virginia. And then I wanted to make it a federal case because they had transported us from Oregon to Virginia. They did isolate us across the country from our family and anyone who could have helped. But like I said earlier, I was not helped when I did try to pursue that. And, and keep in mind on top of this, I'm having to learn to adjust to the conditioning that most people got. I'm having to, I didn't have any adult skills. I didn't know how to approach life in a healthy and appropriate way. It was a very, very long and difficult and challenging road. I had a lot of insecurities about always feeling behind and not quite as developed as other adults. And there was no stopping me from acquiring the knowledge I needed to learn those things. And I did have help along the way. And as for Tanya, I'm gonna start. As for Tanya, she does still live in Virginia. After Randall, I believe it was Randall who helped us escape. It is a little foggy because trauma and brains, your brain wants to protect you. And it doesn't always give you all of the details at once. Sometimes it waits until you're safe and happy in a relationship and then it starts pouring things out. But we can talk about that later. After Brandon and I left Virginia, Randall actually burned down the trailer. I don't know the details, and I only got the news from people who lived in that neck of the woods, and then also from Tanya, which, like I mentioned in my first video, you can't trust what she says. She's very good at taking a teensy bit amount of truth and then working it into a form of reality, her reality. So one way or another, the trailer burned down, and she was able to get assistance into new housing. And during that time, Brandon and I were being rehabbed with therapy and tons of attention at school. I still visited my brother's classes as a TA. I spent my lunch times with him. it was, it was, we stuck together. And it's tough when you go through that kind of stuff because you don't know how to get along with other kids. The things that they're talking about, I can't relate to, I don't have an interest in. And the things that I'm talking about are what what can I say in those situations? I can't say anything about myself that isn't terrible or scary. And so I just really s- I either spent a lot of time living in the moment or just not talking at all. Um, and I actually ended up making friends with foreign exchange students because people from other countries who were willing to travel as teenagers to different places tended to have a level of maturity that I wasn't able to find in my more local peers. And, I don't mean that in any kind of insulting way, but, I made some really unforgettable friends who are still in contact today. And, those were the people who I could share a table with. In Virginia, the lunchroom was very segregated. The students naturally segregated themselves. When I first tried to sit with, you know, uh, one table, they would not allow me to sit there, and then I would try to sit at a different table, and they'd also reject me. And then I tried to sit with the Hispanic kids, and I couldn't understand anything they were saying. And I eventually wound up at like the artist nerd table, which was like the misfits table. And that's kind of where I met one of my good friends. And the two of us supported each other. She also had an abusive parent, and we carried each other through those times. I don't want to dwell too much on that. That is my story and it is my baseline, and it is something that I have to manage. There's not really any letting go of your baseline conditioning, but you can manage it and you can grow from it. And, you know, there are other questions that I would like to answer, but I think that it would take separate videos for those, especially the questions about post-traumatic growth. It's a topic I'm very passionate about and would love to. I have a lot to say about it, and I'll cover that in another video. And the last thing I want to say is that I am fully not intending, I have solid plans. I know how to turn things around for future generations of our kids. I have a trauma-informed educational approach that's adaptable and scalable across cultures and different educational spaces. And right now, I don't want to put everything out there until everything is legally protected and I have the right team around me. I have already started gathering some amazing people who are supporting me in this and working with me on this. And then I also want to say thank you to the grant writers and other people who have stepped up with their individual skill sets to offer their services, because this is going to be a community effort. And I think there's enough information out there at this point that we know what the problems are. We know what's not working, and it's time to change it. It's no longer acceptable to keep operating in these flawed systems. It's just not. And um, I do have I have a really great solution. I'm so excited to share it when the time is appropriate. But for now, thank you so much for being here. I really, I'm so moved by the support in the comments. Oh my goodness, sorry, from everybody. I I actually expected a lot more trolls, to be honest, and I'm just really I I'm clearly at a loss for words. I just thank you, um, thank you.